Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. I suppose, Kieran, I should grudgingly congratulate you for having a World Cup winner in your side now. People were asking me for days, who are you supporting in this one? I went, I should be supporting France, of course, because they haven't got any Brighton players in it. But, yeah.
Well, that spoken. I'll be disappointed in you if you said anything different. With a bit of luck, I think this is probably a long shot. He might be displaying the medal at the Valley on Wednesday night in the we hate Crystal Palace more than you derby between Charlton and Brighton.
Wow, is that what is that? Been arranged as a We Hate Palace more than you derby, or just a friendly?
No, it's fourth round the League Cup.
Oh, is it? Are you still in that? Are you? Oh, okay. If that's the way you want to take it seriously, that's fine. The rest of us gave up on that a long time ago. I think we are out of it. I can't remember. Yes, we are. Well, yes, I don't begrudge you having the World Cup winner. Because as far as I know, I don't think Brighton ground has ever been used as an Olympic venue, as Selhurst Park was in 1948. So there you are. That makes us even. Denmark versus Egypt, I think it was. It's a questions pod, Kieran. It's slightly shorter than normal because we're easing our way into the Christmas period. We're having a normal news pod on Thursday, but then this is one that we're recording. We're having to squeeze it in because you've got another pod to do, and we've just been watching a very long World Cup final, and I had to go to a carol service. I've
got a confession. I got two answers wrong in the question show last week.
Did you?
Yeah. The EFL playoff split. I hadn't looked at the handbook in detail enough, so one of our listeners took me to task for that. And everybody should know section 10.15e.
Yeah,
and so should I, if truth be told. But I was a bit dozy, so I got that wrong. And apparently, I got the question on the Peterborough bond slightly wrong as well. So I have to up my game.
I wondered why I had a text from Swiss Ramble saying producer guy's been trying to get hold of me. Have you got his? So anyway, our first question. Let's try and get them all right today, Kieran. As far as I'm concerned, if you hadn't told me that, Kieran, I wouldn't have known. Stuart Clarkson has our first question, and Stuart says, this is a question that I hope will be relevant for not only my club, Nottingham Forest, but also other clubs that are promoted to the Premier League. Of all the clubs that have been promoted, is there a relationship between transfer spending and staying up? Norwich have clearly gone for the minimum spend boomerang approach. Villa clearly splashed a fair bit of cash, including Matty Cash. Well done, Stuart, for the Christmas cracker joke. Is there an amount that clubs should spend? Speaking of Villa, by the way, I would have sent Argentina's keeper off today. There would have been a first yellow card for just looking snidey, and then a second yellow card for throwing that ball away. He should have been off. But that's I presume the answer to this, Kieran, is that yes, there is a correlation. Is there? Although Fulham spent a lot of money, didn't they, in previous seasons and didn't stay up? So
yes, there's no guarantee. But if we take a look at the clubs that came up in 2016-17, Borough and Hull both went straight down, and they spent Hull especially spent quite modestly. The three clubs that came up the following season, which was Newcastle, Brighton, and Huddersfield, they all stayed up. Huddersfield didn't spend very much, and they get caught out quite often. You do get second season syndrome, and if you punch above your weight, spend relatively little money in your first season, and you do survive. First of all, credit to the club for that. But normally you get caught out the second season, and that was also the case with Sheffield United, who came up, spent modestly. So there is a link. I mean, Villa spent an awful lot of money. And just stayed up. Then we've seen Fulham spend a lot of money and go down, and spend not very much money and go down. So trying to work out a correlation purely related to transfer spend is an imperfect science. What we do tend to see, however, there's a much stronger correlation if you take wages plus transfer fee amortization. And link that to final place in the table, and that's much closer. But I would say sort of the the benchmark figure, if you spend, I reckon it's 75 million, then you've probably just done enough. With the exception of what happened to Fulham, you've got much more than a 50-50 chance of staying up.
Well, there probably are exceptions to the wages thing as well, because I think Blackpool stayed up, didn't they, that first season with paying
No, they went down.
wages
They went down last game of the season.
Oh, they did. Oh, okay. So we'll scrub that. You know what? You know what my subconscious was doing there, Kieran. My subconscious was saying, "Oh, poor Kieran got something wrong. I'm going to get something wrong as well, just so he doesn't feel lonely." That's what happened. Emlyn Riley has our next question, and this is a really interesting one, Kieran, especially for people like my wife, who's a massive conspiracy theorist on this sort of thing. Emlyn Riley says recent changes by Apple have caused massive disruption in the advertising industry. Now, one consequence of this is first-party data, which Emlyn helpfully describes as data collected directly from customers, having become incredibly valuable, with numerous retailers setting up their own ad units. Given that Premier League teams have such big global followings across numerous channels, do they sell or monetize any of the data collected about fans? For example, if my club knows that I've purchased a ticket for an away game in London, would they show me train tickets and hotel prices, in brackets, or loan companies, given the price of train tickets, laughing face emoji, across their website or TV channel?
I think this is a really valid point from Emlyn. Under the umbrella heading of fan engagement, what football clubs have been trying to do is to open the Pandora's box of, we know that lots of people like us. How do I convert that into money? And what they want to do is to effectively have a bit like the relationship Tesco has with its club card. So, lots of people have got club cards. If you go to Tesco's, you can get discounts off individual foodstuffs, and you can pick up your points and blah, blah, blah. But what Tesco do is they are harvesting you. They are building up that profile of you. This person likes cheese, likes broccoli, likes whatever, and then when they contact you, they can target you with tailored investments. Tailored adverts. Or potentially, unless you've unticked an awful lot of boxes, they've got a lot of data on you, which data has value, and that's what football clubs are trying to do. And they're trying to do that in broadly two ways. First of all, we've got the official club app, and when you sign up for that app, you give some personal data away. One of the things which they're really keen on for you to do is for them to know where you are. And on many apps, it says, you want to tick this box where they can follow your location. So they can start. They're all trying to work out more and more about you in terms of your habits, because that has value. The other way they can do that is through membership schemes, where again you give away quite a bit of personal data. Converting that into gold, I think, is the biggest challenge. But for the big clubs, the likes of Real Madrid, Manchester United, Bayern Munich, and so on, they've got an awful lot of people that are signing up for these schemes, and that certainly does have value. Nobody's quite yet worked out a means of perfecting it, and whoever is the marketing consultant that does do that, because if you talk to anybody in marketing or advertising, they will tell you that 50% of advertising spend is completely wasted, but they've not yet worked out which 50% is being wasted, and therefore they tend to overspend in terms of their many of their schemes. So if you talk to one of the marketing gurus, of whom there are many, they are saying that this is an area which clubs are giving an awful lot of attention to, because they feel that to a certain extent they're giving away IP. If you are if you are a Celtic fan in New York, or if you're a Manchester United fan in Nairobi, the club's getting your support, but not getting your cash. And what they want to try to do is to get both of those. They are all trying to do that. I mean, the way that they'd like to do that most of all, as far as the big clubs are concerned, is to have complete control over their individual club TV rights, and that way they could monetize that. But that's that's what they tried to achieve through both Super League and Project Big Picture, ideally an independent regulator would certainly put a quash on that.
I was going to say we've gone early, Kieran, but as this is quite a short pod, we've gone halfway through. Where does the Data Protection Act fit in all of this, Kieran? Because I've worked on TV shows where you will have information on contestants, for example, and it doesn't leave the building. At the end of the day, it's a sackable offence. If you take away stuff that's got details of contestants without handing it on or being shredded, you're in trouble. So in my industry, these things are taken very seriously. So if you sign up for these apps, are you automatically not allowed data protection?
You are. I mean, there are GDPR issues which do provide an element of a layer of protection. But do we ever check the? I agree to all the terms and conditions. Blah. There are quite a few boxes to tick and untick. You are given a layer of protection. But where we stand under GDPR now that we are no longer members of the European Union is something which will develop over a period of time as the government comes to a conclusion as to what they consider to be appropriate.
When you pause like that before an answer, I always worry that you started Googling something. And talking of conspiracy theories, because several members of my family are convinced that Twitter's listening to you, Mike Terry says, are the published... how else? Why would I get an advert for Greggs if I hadn't mentioned the fact that I like Greggs sausage rolls? I don't know. Maybe Twitter is listening to you. Maybe there's somebody outside the window.
Well, if you've got a smart device, you cannot. All that I would say is don't let Alexa into your bedroom.
I know. I've heard that for several reasons that you should not let Alexa into your bedroom, and I've heard Alexa doesn't like it. I heard this from a teenager, my teenage cousin, that Alexa doesn't like it if you talk dirty to her. As I'm not surprised, especially the state of my teenage cousin, to be perfectly honest. But I've heard that Alexa's. Somebody described Alexa as a grass, so Uncle Terry would certainly not have let Alexa.
Yes.
She wouldn't have lasted long if she did. But Mike Terry's question is this, and this back in the day, there are lots of conspiracy theories about this. Mike Terry says, are the published match attendances based on physical number of people in the ground or on tickets sold? For example, if I buy a ticket but don't attend, am I counted? And certainly during the World Cup, we've seen a lot of attendances that don't seem to match seats filled in the stadium. And back in the day, Kieran, everyone was convinced there was at least one turnstile at every ground that wasn't hooked up to whatever system was. I'm not convinced that any turnstile at Selhurst Park was ever hooked up to anything, to be honest, because the idea was that the club were getting that turnstile cash in hand. But my guess is, Kieran, that if you're a season ticket holder, you are counted even if you don't go. Is that right?
That's right. The figures that we see quoted are best described as the pretendants.
Yeah, lovely word. Yeah.
And I give you the 26th of December, 2021, Brighton Hove Albion versus Brentford on Boxing Day, which for TV purposes was moved to 8 p.m.
Yeah.
So there's no trains, there's no public transport. Brighton, as you know, is not the easiest of grounds to get to at the best of times. So you take away all the public transport. You've then got I love Boxing Day. You love Boxing Day matches. Yeah, there's something special about them. But it's meet up with a few friends, have a few scoops, go to the match, 3 p.m. back home. Still do all your family stuff. But by 8 p.m., people are gone. Yeah, the last thing you want to do is to go. They're bloated. So I did attend the match because I'm odd. And according to the pretendants, there were 30,141 people at the Amex. I would say there was no more than 15,000 because all around there were swathes and swathes of empty seats because people were saying, we don't want the aggravation. We can't drive to the match because there's no public transport. And hey, it's a public holiday. It's a big family day. We've had a couple of drinks. We don't want to drink and drive. There are a dozen, and it's also live on television. You put all of those factors together. So it was a pretty desultory attendance, and I'm not going to criticise people for not attending. I fully understand. You're not going to get home till 11 p.m. midnight if you're lucky. So people didn't turn up, and I was going, well, there's no way that there's 30,000 there. So it is tickets sold, which is the figures which are being quoted, and clearly that's beneficial. If you're going to your commercial partners, if you're trying to get advertising and so on, and people say, well, if I do advertise the match ball, if I do have a if I do have a hospitality box, what's the attendance likely to be? So, well, the average attendance for the last year has been 31,000. You go, oh, well, that's quite good. Yeah, we're definitely putting an appearance on that. It's one of those things which does frustrate. I know some fans at some clubs have put in an FOI, a freedom of information request to local authorities and sometimes the police in order to try to get the actual number of people attending with mixed results. I know that at Old Trafford, some United fans did get a successful response to that, and you'd be surprised how many empty seats there are at Old Trafford, because you normally think it'd be filled up by tourists. I know when I've tried this at Brighton Hove Council, Brighton Hove or Sussex Police, I got a very firm raspberry as a response. And trying to work out where you stand in terms of freedom of information requests is a bit of a minefield in its own right, because there are some get out clauses, and some authorities are a lot keener to utilise those. Whether they're entitled to utilise those is a long, expensive, and drawn out process that I think the authorities rely on people, unless they are like a dog with a bone, to not bother to try to pursue.
I shall put you in touch, Kieran, with the two chaps from the Palace podcast, FYP, the one that I do, who very tenaciously and eventually successfully did get a freedom of information request granted from the Sussex Police when they claimed that Palace fans they'd collected certain weapons from Palace fans, which they hadn't. So it is why would Man United fans want a freedom of information request about the actual attendance? Is this to do with tickets being available for local fans that can't get them?
I think it was in response, and this goes back to one of the more militant groups amongst the Old Trafford faithful. Manchester United have said for many years, we've got this huge waiting list of people wanting season tickets, and every match is sold out. And it was an anti-Glazer action that was taken. So it's not at the club itself. It would be for you have to give certain data, I believe, in terms of your public safety report, in terms of policing, and in terms of fire and so on. And they managed to get it. And this was to do with the dissatisfaction with the governance and decision making processes of the current ownership group.
And presumably you wanted figures from Brighton because it's like Panini cards. You just have to have certain data. You can't sleep without data.
Yeah. I've always had this be in my bonnet, as people are probably sick and tired of me hearing, that if matches are moved, then we are entitled to some form of recompense. And the idea that it's a minor inconvenience to fans is something which I don't hold to be true. And it's more common in some clubs than others, and that's not a criticism of the fans of those clubs, because I know plenty of people who support Manchester United who will go to half the games during the season because, frankly, if they are playing Bournemouth and it's 12:30 on a Saturday, they can't be arsed and they can flog it to a tourist. Yeah. But sometimes even that is beyond them, and we are treated as second class citizens, even though it's our game as well.
Can I just say, Kieran, that as a teetotaler, I don't think you're allowed to say a few scoops. It's culturally inappropriate. we're at the penultimate question already. I told you this was going to be a short one, everybody. And our penultimate question comes from Connor Downey. And Connor says, in the long term, do you think it could be possible there are enough gazillionaires in the world that 20-plus clubs end up in a position like Newcastle, breaking up the Big Six by effectively making a Big 20? Even in my mind, even as a Newcastle fan, this is as daunting a proposition as the Super League if 20 clubs cut themselves off from the EFL in an NFL-style closed shop. Am I being ridiculous? Now, I think 5 years ago, Kieran, I would have said Connor probably was being ridiculous, but it's not so much the money. With the increasing number of Premier League clubs being owned by Americans, people are starting to get worried, whether it's a conspiracy theory or not, that we could end up with an attempt to impose an NFL-style closed shop. Whether the government would resist that, I don't know. But I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility anymore. I think it would have been 5 years ago, but it's an interesting thought from Connor.
Yes. And the thing is, being a billionaire isn't enough anymore. You've got to be beyond a billionaire in many regards, which is quite ludicrous. We have seen attempts to prevent the Premier League becoming a billionaire's playground or a gazillionaire's playground in respect of Newcastle. Remember, there were attempts by the Big Six clubs to delay and prevent the Newcastle taking over, and that involved 3 years. 3 years of excuse making and so on before the PIF deal went through. I think Connor certainly does have a valid point. The EFL clubs do have a degree of protection in terms of what they've signed with the Premier League, but everything is open to negotiation. So there's no doubt that the larger clubs in the Premier League want a reduction from 20 clubs to 18, and in an ideal world, they want to de-risk the threat of relegation. So therefore, reducing the number of relegation spots to 2, or probably 2 plus a playoff between the third bottom Premier League club and the third, fourth, and fifth in the Championship is the way that they'd want to go. And in doing so, they'll promise the EFL some more money. So we know that there is going to be some form of offer taking place. I think that's not good for the clubs in the EFL. It's actually not good for those clubs at the arse end of the Premier League, because you've got more chance of coming up if there's 3 going up. But I think it is highly unlikely, stroke impossible, to completely get rid of relegation. The reaction would be so severe that it wouldn't work, and also there's no jeopardy. In part of the reason why we go to matches is that at the start of the season, my first aim as a Brighton fan, and possibly yours as a Palace fan, is let's avoid relegation.
Oh yeah,
and matches towards the end of the season are just as exciting if you are between 15th and 20th as they are if you're in the top 4 or 5, because there's something in it. If the only thing in it is whether you get an extra £2 million per position, then frankly it becomes very, very dull very, very quickly.
I was going to say, Kieran, that broadcasters wouldn't like a closed shop with no relegation, but it doesn't seem to bother them in America, does it?
It doesn't, but that's a cultural thing. Because there's been American franchise sports have been brought up with no concept of relegation, but and therefore they're used to it. Whereas for us, it's a huge achievement.
Yeah. All right, now, Kieran, our last question comes from Richard Jenkins. And Richard says, I wondered if you could shed some light on how TV rights work for UEFA competitions. It was announced in April that UEFA had sold the Nation League TV rights for many countries, including Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, to something called Viaplay from 2024. Just a few days later, though, it was announced that Channel 4 had bought the rights to England games, to which my reaction was jealousy at having to pay for yet another streaming service to watch my country, while England fans can see their games for free. My questions are, who owns these TV rights, and why are things seemingly different for England, and how does UEFA distribute the other home nations' TV revenues?
Ultimately, these are UEFA's rights, and what it does is that some individual countries, they don't have enough weight in order to make money through selling their own rights. So therefore, if you can go to a broadcaster and you can say, well, we're going to give you Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia's rights as a package, and it's 120 games over the next 4 years, that is actually quite attractive to a broadcaster, because they look at it in terms of, that's X number of hours. So similarly, the rights for the home nations, as a package, excluding England, are quite attractive to an individual broadcaster, and it increases the price because Sky are thinking, well, if we lose those rights, then that's not good news for us. So it creates a bit of a bidding war. Whereas for the larger nations, the likes of France, Germany, Italy, England, Spain, and so on, they've got a big enough audience in their own right to be able to sell the rights directly to the consumer, directly to a broadcaster as a single nation. So it comes down to the pulling power of the individual football association, and whether UEFA thinks it's better to sell them in groups or as single pots.
Okay. Just a reminder that the first ever Price of Football replica shirt is now available to pre-order. They're available in adults and kid sizes, and all the profits will go to Gambling with Lives. Find the link to our online shop by going to priceoffootball.com or on our social media pages, or the description of this episode in your podcast app. The pre-order period will end at 5 p.m. on Friday, December the 30th, so get yours ordered now. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod, that'd be very kind. You can do so by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. I'm not a natural salesman, Kieran. I'm not things like get yours ordered now. Doesn't come naturally to me. So get yours ordered. If you want one, you don't have to have one. Of course you do. You'd love them. They're fantastic shirts. You'll see photographs.
They are great shirts. Yeah.
You'll see. Yeah, you're going to. If you're lucky, you'll see photographs of Kieran and I wearing one of them coming up on your social media. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, as always, thanks to people from Patreon and everybody else, and we do hold our hands up when we get things wrong, if that is the case. There's various ways of supporting the show. Another way of doing it is to give us a review using your app. It helps us with algorithms. It helps us in the charts. It helps us to book guests, because people tend to say, well, who are these dudes? But it doesn't matter what you write. Apparently, it's the stars that count. So you could say you would rather have the show presented by Brian May and Peter Kay, which would be an unusual pairing, but it wouldn't bother me or Kevin, it won't bother producer Guy when he goes to try to sell the show.
It would bother producer Guy in that one of those people would cost us a lot of money.
Are you talking about the tightest man in showbiz?
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.